Here we are from the locker room with Coach Mike Smith, three-time NFL Coach of the Year. And this year we've got another Coach of the Year who we're very lucky to have helping us from the locker room. I think will really give us an opportunity to share some of his wisdom. And that's Coach Steve Forbes, the new head basketball coach at Wake Forest. So thanks for being on, Coach. And we're anxious to hear your thoughts and ideas on leadership and coaching and life in general. So, Mike, I know you got a couple questions for Coach Forbes. Why don't you get this ball rolling?
I will. First, I want to say, Coach, hey, thank you so much for coming on. And I want to tell you, I've admired you as a coach, not only on the court but off the court, with seeing you at football games, interacting with your players, and that kind of leads me into a couple of questions. But the first one I want to ask you, Steve, is your path to becoming a head coach is probably a little bit different than a lot of guys. Similar to mine in terms that I was in my late 40s when I got my first opportunity. But tell us a little bit about your background and the hurdles that were put up and the things that you had to go through.
Well, Mike, I'm a former baseball player, so I like to look at it like this. I kind of walked to first and stole second and got sacrificed over to third and stole home and got to where I'm at today. A lot of people in this business that, they want to hit a single and they want to land on third base. And you got to work your way around the bases and get experience to really probably be prepared for these kind of jobs that we're all trying to get. Yeah. I started out in junior college, and I didn't play Division I basketball. I was really a better baseball player in college than I was a basketball player, but I loved basketball. I loved the game. I was one of those players that really was probably more of a cerebral player, than a talented player. And I just decided in college, right at the end, Mike, that I wanted to coach. I got a degree in history and a minor in political science, but I really didn't want to be a lawyer, which I kind of studied to be. So I figured there's a lot more talented lawyers than me than out there. So I just went on this path and, I typed up, I say the word type. Now I use a typewriter. I typed 200 letters to be a GA my senior year in college and got 199 rejection letters. And you got one person that wanted to talk to me, and it was Bob Hansen, Nebraska, Omaha. So on my honeymoon, I took my wife on our honeymoon to Omaha, Nebraska. I wouldn't recommend that by no means. I think she thought I said Oahu, but I said Omaha. And I interviewed and stayed with my former college coach and didn't get the job. So I went back to Southern Arkansas where I graduated from, and I was the SID with no benefits for $6,000 a year, no computer. And my wife taught second grade at Waldo, Arkansas. We lived in a one-room cabin with no heat. And then my wife became pregnant with my first child, Elizabeth. And so it was time for me to get a job, a real job. I had to get something that paid with benefits. So I became assistant basketball coach at Southwestern Community College in Iowa. And I did that for 5 years. And I went to Great Bend, Kansas, and coached another 4 years of junior college in Kansas at Barton County. And then I got a break. After 9 years, I got an assistant job at the University of Idaho, which I took it sight unseen. I knew the coach. I'd never been to Idaho. I said, this is my first Division I job. I'm going to take it. Didn't realize how hard a job that was going to be. Not a lot of players around Moscow, Idaho. If you dropped an atomic bomb on Moscow, Idaho, you would not kill a Division I player. I can promise you that. And so there was a lot of planes, trains, and automobiles there in recruiting. And then, I went to Louisiana Tech, where my wife's from Louisiana. That's probably where my second professional player I became involved with. Paul Millsap, you're probably familiar with, played for Atlanta Hawks. I helped recruit him to Louisiana Tech. Left there and went to Illinois State with Porter Moser, who ended up coaching in the Final Four, a few years ago at Loyola. And then I got a lucky break. Billy Gillespie hired me at Texas A&M, and I say lucky. They were 0-18 when we went there, but I learned how to coach. Mike, I learned how to run a program. Billy's a masterful coach. We turned we had the largest turnaround in the history of college basketball at that time. Won 21 games our first year, and then went to the NCAA tournament the next year and beat Syracuse. And then As you know how this profession works, I was on the move, you know, and Bruce Pearl had tried to hire me when he got the Tennessee job. I turned it down, and then he offered me the job again, and I took it. So I went to Tennessee for 5 years and had a great run, and then got fired. And I told my wife when we got fired in year 22, we were lucky. And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, it took 22 years to get fired. There's a lot of guys, it happens a lot faster, you know." So I went back to JUCO, back to doing what I love to do. I had an NCAA show cause, so I really couldn't coach in Division I. I guess I could have, but I didn't really want to put that on anybody. The only thing I could not do was evaluate or contact prospects, but it wasn't worth it. So I went back to JUCO and went 62-6, went to a couple national championships. I knew I had to get with the right person if I was going back to Division I, and I got lucky with Greg Marshall at Wichita State. He was coming off a Final Four, and he hired me. And, you know, we went, 65-4 the 2 years I was there. Had great players. I was kind of along for the ride. And then, you know, here comes Doc Sander and Dr. Nolan. You know, and I had known a little bit about East Tennessee State because I was at Tennessee. I knew they loved basketball. I didn't really follow the program that close. I knew Coach Bartow personally and well. And so they called and asked me if I'd be interested. And they came out and interviewed me. And quite honestly, I thought I was interviewing, but I wasn't. They were really kind of talking me into taking the job, you know. And so I took the job and had 5 great years, and it was really hard for me to leave. But then just, you know, got this opportunity during a pandemic to coach in the ACC, and it was just a hard thing to turn down, you know. And it's about trust, as you know, with ownership. I had great leadership relationships at ETSU, but, you know, the athletic director here is John Curry, who was my sport administrator at Tennessee. So I knew him well, and he wanted me to be the coach, and so that meant a lot to me.
Yes, Steve. And, you know, so many people in coaching go through trials and tribulations, to get to where they are. And I think it's a great story that you're able to tell and share with our listeners about. It's not like you're going to just go and become a coach at the collegiate level, and you have to go through these battles. And there's a trend right now, especially in professional sports and even professional football. I'll take it because I know that a little better, but, you know, they're hiring these 34-year-old guys that, you know, or don't have the experience. And what do you think about that and that trend in terms of these guys that, like you and myself, that went through a journey to get an opportunity to do it?
I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I don't begrudge a guy if somebody's willing to hire somebody because they're young, you know, they don't have a lot of experience. That's not on that person. It's on the person hiring them. You know, for me, I thought I was ready, but I wasn't. You know, now that I think back to it, you know, there was some times maybe a little bit earlier in my career, I didn't really chase jobs, but I kind of wanted to be a head coach like everybody. But now that I look back on it, there was no way I was ready. And I will tell you this, the one thing that probably prepared me the most for being the head coach at East Tennessee State, my first Division I job at the age of 50 was coaching in Northwest Florida, JUCO, those 2 years, because I had been with Bruce Pearl, I had been with Billy Gillespie, had all this experience, and then I had a chance to go back to junior college and apply it. And I really didn't run my program any different at East Tennessee State than I did at Northwest Florida. I just had more people helping me, you know. And so I wouldn't trade that for anything. I think there's something to be said for somebody that has been up and down the ladder, has hit the bottom and rose back to the top, has got their butt beat and known how to come back. I've learned more from losing than I have from winning, you know, and I think that's hard to understand when you're young.
Oh, I agree with you, Coach. There's so many more lessons from a loss than a W. And I think that's one of the things that we lose sight of sometimes, and we have to make sure that we get grounded and understand that the tough times are when we're going to get stronger. It's not, it's not the good times.
Yeah.
We get stronger through the tough times. We find out where we really are in our heart and our mind.
This is going to be a strange analogy, but one of the most stressful seasons I've ever been through. We won an NCAA record 35 wins in a row, Wichita State my first year, went 35-0 until we lost one game in the NCAA tournament to Kentucky. Why was it stressful? It was because we hadn't lost. So we didn't. Were we really getting better, or were we just putting a Band-Aid on something because we were winning? Because sometimes, as you know, winning sometimes just covers up your issues. They're still there. And so it was like very intense those last month of pushing the team, keeping them hungry. So, I mean, film study, if you came and watched film that year, I say this about Coach Marshall because he's an unbelievable coach. We were 30-0. If you were to watch film, you'd have thought we were 15-15. I mean, it's just we were on edge the entire time because of what we just said. We didn't have that loss to go back to and say, see, look, you do this, you do that, this is what happens. We didn't have it. And then when we did experience that final loss, that first loss, we had no chance to fix it because the season was over because we were in a one-and-done situation in the tournament. And so that was a different experience for me personally, just from, from learning from a loss. I think one of the biggest things I'm most proud of at East Tennessee State was the fact I think in the 5 years we were there, only one time did we lose 3 in a row. And that was at the end of the season when we were winning the league, my third year. We always were able to bounce back, from a loss. And I think that's important.
Oh, I think it is, Steve. And I think I'll share with you a story with the Falcons. When I took the job, one of the things that I said that our goal was not to have back-to-back losses. And if you can go through a season in the NFL or in college or even in basketball, maybe it would be not lose two games in a row and because your schedule's longer. But I told the guys, if we just go through and don't lose back-to-back games, we're going to look up in December and you know what? We're going to have learned a whole lot about ourselves and our football team, and we're going to be right in the middle of the playoff race. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Yep. And so, sometimes you've got to take those losses to make your team grow. Like you said, you guys went 35-0. You really didn't have a chance to grow. I could not imagine the pressure that you had on you, not only because of the going undefeated all the way through the regular season, but you had no way to fall back and have that learning lesson. And I can imagine that first loss was devastating to you and your team because it happened in the tournament.
I don't even really know how to explain it, because you're sitting there in St. Louis, the season's over. And we're like, how can the season be over? We just lost our first game. Yeah. We can't even go back and correct it. It was a really odd feeling. One of the things that I'm a big believer in is treating practice like a game. So I tell my team after every practice, either as a win or a loss. We lost yesterday. And so I it's exactly what you said. To learn how to string wins together, you have to do it in practice. And so then if you don't have losing streaks in practice, it'll help you, I believe, in the season. And I think in the 4 to 5 years I was there, I think we never lost 2 in a row. It was always just 1 and we bounced back, and I think this is the way we attack practice too, is that, you put that on them after hey guys, today was a loss, man. Tomorrow you got to bounce back. Tomorrow you got to do better. Tomorrow, we can't string 2 losses in a row in practice, and that's kind of how I do it psychologically with the players.
Yeah. And Steve, I know that when you give that information to the players that, hey, this wasn't good enough or that was a loss, they understand what you want out of them and how they have to perform and how every day really is a game. And that's a great way as a coach. And for young coaches, I would, that would be one of my takeaways right now is that, hey, you've got to grade every practice, whether it's a win or a loss or not good enough for us. And you can't base it on who you're playing the next week. You got to base it on, hey, this is a game. I agree with you 100%.
Oh, I've been more mad after wins than losses. In fact, that is typically my reaction. I think sometimes for the players, it's a little shocking. I can only think of one time in the 5 years at East Tennessee State, I was just livid after a loss. And it was at Furman, and I lost my mind. But normally, I'm pretty reserved after a loss because I need to go home and I need to decompress and I need to see it before I make a rash decision. And there's a lot of times we win and I'm just disgusted by the way we won. And I don't have any problem saying that to them then because they're feeling good about themselves. I think one thing about doing it in practice the way we do it is when you get your team to really care about each other and care about knowing that winning and losing is important to them, losing should hurt. So I want them to hurt a little bit after practice when they go down to the locker room. They're like, dang, man, we didn't do well today. Coach isn't happy and we lost. If we were playing today, we were playing Duke today, we got beat. And that's – I think you're trying to develop that kind of mentality, with your players on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And Steve, I know you and I, Doc's not had his chance to get in here, but I am so intrigued at the conversation we're having, and I want to ask you a couple of questions because I've seen it from afar, and it's about culture and building culture. I was so impressed about the culture that you had. You could see it, and I had the opportunity to see it watching games and watching your team and how they interacted with one another in an actual game. But I also got to see it in social settings. I got to see you interact with your players at tailgate parties before football games. And I think that's the part of coaching that young coaches and some coaches don't understand, that we have to connect with our players on so many different levels. And I know you told me a story, and I've heard it about you having the guys always check in. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk to me about, building a culture and how you go about doing it.
I mean, honestly, you said it in your book, right? What do we stand for? And that is the biggest thing for me is identity. Because I believe you can establish your identity. Identity is immediate. Culture takes time. You know that.
Yes.
And so, but I don't think a lot of teams know who the hell they are. And when I speak to, clinics and those type of things about identity, I just did it Sunday to the Wisconsin coaches, was if I asked your team, what is your identity, could they tell me? Because I don't think a lot of teams can. And so I keep it pretty simple, and this isn't rocket science, but our identity and everything we do identity-wise matches up to how we practice, the drills, whatever we're doing matches our identity. It's play hard, play smart, play together. Now, we don't always play smart, but we're going to play hard and play together. And I think, Mike, a lot of teams think they play hard and they don't. They don't. We're going to share the ball on offense. We're going to be gritty, grimy, tough together on defense. We're going to possess every ball with two hands, and we're going to do what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to do it on and off the court. So in a nutshell, if you don't know anything about basketball and you can't watch my team play, you should be able to walk out in the parking lot and say, man, those guys play so hard. They play together. Man, are they tough on defense. They grab that ball with two hands, and they execute. I believe if you could just do that, no matter what offense or defense you're running, you're going to be successful. But your players have to be bought into that every single day, and you got to hold them accountable to it. How do you do that? We got to have a relationship with your players, a genuine one, not one that's just based on practice. So I have the players check in the office every day before 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and they have to have a conversation with one of us coaches, hopefully me, and it can't be about basketball. And I can't tell you how many times I've stemmed off problems or issues just by reading bad body language. A player comes in here at 10 a.m. and he's got his head down. I can ask him, what's the problem? Well, I'm homesick. My girlfriend broke it. Whatever it is, I'm not doing well in my class. But if I only see him in practice, there's no way that's going to happen, because practice is a totally different environment, as you know. And I tell my players all the time, my biggest fear as a coach is one thing, that 10 years from now, we'll have a reunion or I'll be at their wedding and they'll say to me, Coach, if you just would have pushed me a little bit harder, I think I could have been a better player. I'm not going to give my players that. And so when I go to practice, it's game on, which means it's going to be the truth, and the truth's going to hurt. And I don't ever take this thing to my practice. I never take my phone to practice. Never. I'm always focused on – I love practice more than the games, to be honest with you, because you're going to practice more than you play. We play 30-some games every year. We have 150 practices. So you better love to play and you better love to practice. You better love to coach practice. And so my players, I'm not afraid to put my foot up their ass, but I'm also not afraid to tell them that I love them. And that's genuine. And so that relationship starts by an understanding that coming to the office is not the principal's office. Normally when the head coach calls you to the office, you're probably going to cut his ass, or, you're going to tell him, man, you're going down, you're going to the taxi squad or whatever. It's usually not positive. And I think what happens a lot of times in coaching is we spend so much time, we don't spend enough time with the guys that are doing right. We spend so much time with the guys that are doing wrong. And I think allowing those kids to come in the office every day and interact with us, you're seeing the kids that are doing the right things too. And I've been places where if you didn't see them in practice, you never saw them, ever. They didn't come around. So how do you have a relationship with them? And I live right across the street from Wake Forest. They can walk to my house. My house is wide open. My family has always been that way. And so it's really, you can't say family. We always say family on three, but you got to live it. And you have to, you can't just say the words and then not do it. And I'm just a firm believer in that.
Yeah, Steve. And I think that builds trust. And when you have trust in your players, and the players have trust in you, it only bodes well for a successful program. And I've seen that from afar, what you did at East Tennessee State. One of the things that I would do, Steve, at the Falcons, is that I would make sure that our coaches, every day we had to walk through the locker room twice a day.
There you go.
Ate lunch with our players, and you couldn't eat with your position. I like that. In football, you have, the linebackers, and the linebacker, you're always interacting with them. So we'd have the wide receiver coach go sit down, and he might with three defensive linemen. Right. And that's where we got a lot of our interaction. Of course, we didn't have classes, so we would go through the day, and our time to really have an opportunity to visit with them was in the cafeteria. And then we also had it designed. I had the way that the building was designed, it was a little different. We had to walk through the locker room every day to go to the cafeteria. Yeah. So we were always in, it was, quote, the players' locker room. I told the guys when I got there, that's not going to be the players' locker room. That's going to be our locker room. That's our house. And we all live in it, and we're going to share it, and we're all going to go, and we interact, and there'd be a card game going on, and you may sit down and play a hand or two. I think those are the things as a coach, when you interact with those guys, they know you better, they trust you, and that doesn't mean when you get on the field. Steve, I've watched you coach, and you coach them hard, man. And when you watch a Steve Forbes coach basketball practice, they are getting coached every single minute. And that was the thing that I was most impressed with. There wasn't a second going by where you weren't coaching the hell out of them.
Well, and I believe in, to play fast, you got to practice fast. And so I also believe in tempo in practice too. You brought up something that it's funny, just triggered my mind. The last couple of years at East Tennessee State in the summer, and I always use the summer to kind of create the chemistry. Is kind of like not boot camp, but it was basically me against them, trying to get them to play through fatigue and all those things. But at the end, we always catered our evening meal into the locker room. And we had tables in my last couple of years, we put tables in there, and we had name cards for the players. And we moved the name cards every meal. So they had to sit with different people, and they had to put their phone away and have a conversation with the people they were sitting with. I'd read that Pat Riley used to do that on the plane when he was the head coach of the Lakers. He'd move the name cards around so the guys had to interact with each other. And I thought that was a great idea. And so I did that the last couple of years I was there. And I think that really helped, as you said. And then us coaches after practice, we could filter through, the locker room and hang out. And like you said, just laugh, make fun of each other. I'd hang around practice a lot, and the guys would, be shooting half-court shots, and, we'd do that and have some fun with that. But I do think they have to see a different side of you besides just being the CEO, of the program.
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. That interaction has got to be both on the court and off the court. And, I know that Doc has some questions that we want to talk about. And I'm sorry, Doc, that I've kind of, when you go coach to coach, when we go coach to coach, sometimes we get going.
I mean, listen, Doc's been in my office every day for 5 years. I don't
want to talk to him now.
It's amazing I got anything done, during that time I worked there, just based on Doc telling me, about the days in Cincinnati or VCU or Memphis, wherever he was being the AD at. So, I pretty much know his story.
Yeah, that's for sure. I've heard all those stories before, and each time they get kind of, they kind of get elevated a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Hey, but let me ask you something. Clearly, we know each other really well, but one of the things that I've always wondered about, and we're going to ask every individual we have on the show this question: one person in your life besides your family who had the most impact on you, and what was that, and how did that really affect your career, your whole thoughts on life?
Wow. Well, that's a hard one, but I'm going to go all the way back to probably the mid 70s. And I'm going to tell you, I probably, if Lute Olson hadn't become the head basketball coach at Iowa, I probably wouldn't have loved basketball, and I may not be a coach. I think him coming to Iowa had a huge impact on me. I just fell in love with the Iowa Hawkeyes. And this was a time when, as you know, there's maybe one game on television a year. But I had the opportunity growing up in a really small town right outside of Iowa City. I could go up there. I could go to the game sometimes. I could go to practice. Back in those days, you could just sit up in the stands and watch practice. And I think being in that environment, and in 1980, they went to the Final Four. And Coach was just like, he oozed class. He's just a very classy person. He ran his program. People didn't question him and the way he did it. It just was a model program. And I think me probably just being a witness to that really probably shaped me as just my passion and my love for the game. I don't know. I've being able to work for Billy Gillespie and Bruce Pearl and Greg Marshall all in a row. We don't always get to choose who we work for, and that's a hard thing. And I always tell young coaches, you got to be careful because, you're putting your career in the hands of the coach you're working for. So you got to be, you got to try to be as selective as you can, even though I know the jobs that are hard to get. But you got to think about who I've worked for. Billy was the Big 12 Coach of the Year when I was there. Bruce was the SEC Coach of the Year when I was there, and Greg was the National Coach of the Year when I was there. So, I've had some really good teachers as far as not always what to do and what not to do too, right, in coaching. And then you have to fit all that into your own personality. And I overcoached the team when I first came there, and I told you that, that first semester I was trying to do all the things we did at Wichita State and run all these plays. And we were about 500, if you remember, and I was really frustrated. And I went back and, it wasn't the kids' fault. It was my fault. And we went back second semester. I think we ran 6 plays and won 19 games. I just let them play, and so I don't know. I guess it'd have to be, probably Coach Olson. I had Don Showalter was at that same time. Don Showalter, who's the head of USA Basketball now, actually was the high school coach at my high school, which is crazy. I graduated 32 people, but he was the high school coach there, and he's now head of USA Basketball, and he got me involved in camps and things like that. But probably those guys.
Hey, one of the things I think, it's kind of funny. Every coach has a brand, you know what I mean? And, clearly your brand is you're a great recruiter. Everybody likes you. You've been around a while. But one of the things I think that people don't understand or don't ever get to see is how organized you are and how well thought out you are. Can you talk a little bit about that and how important that is?
Yeah.
Listen, just, your organization and how you kind of try to.
I was always very organized as a student, and I wasn't always a great student. Or early in my life, I was terrible, as an elementary kid. But then I'm a first generation college student in my family. But I became very organized. I was really big on a to-do list. And so what I have done now is, I have this to-do list I have, and it's organized based on my job. So my AD's at the top, which where you would have been at one point, deputy AD, academics, compliance, donors, SID, basketball alumni. Then my assistant coaches are down the middle individually. And then I have my director of basketball ops, my assistant head coach, strength coach, trainer, development, video. Joe's in charge of player relationships, and I have my personal list to do, and then my family. And so I attack this thing every day the best I can, and I check them off and move on. But I don't micromanage, as you know. I hire good people, and I let them do their job. I'm not a big I have meetings, but not very often. I believe in letting people do their job, and I give them some direction, obviously, but I'm very organized. You're right, and I'm a little OCD when it comes to that. If you looked at my desk, and I don't have much mess on my desk. I'm pretty straight lined, in my life. I don't have a lot of distractions, especially right now. Basically I just do my job and go home. A guy asked me the other day, what do you do for Dan, one of my former guy I used to work with, he asked me, what do you do for a hobby? I said, I don't have a hobby. I work and I go home. I'm a terrible golfer. I'm bad at fishing. I don't have any patience for that. So, right now it's just my job, but I love my job. And when I quit loving my job, then I'm going to join you and Mike playing golf. That's just the way it's going to be, And so, I think it's important to be organized, and it's something that I've carried over to my own children. My daughter works there. She's in your doctoral program. She has the same list to do. She just uses it for academics for football.
Let me ask both you guys, let me ask you a question. Clearly, a lot of your success is because you've been able to lead and manage. And I know from just being around both you guys, what's really important to you are your staff. And how do you kind of put together a staff? What's the logic behind it? What are the key components to getting that staff? And I know both Steve and Mike, your staffs are really close together and really, committed. They were all in. Can you both kind of talk a little bit about, your thought process of putting that staff together, and then after you put them together, how you get them to kind of not be competitive, not, want to be the main guy, but we're all in this together. How do you do that?
Well, for me, I pay everybody the same amount of money. I've never ever had somebody make more dollars than anybody else, and I've never had an associate head coach. I've been an associate head coach before, which really didn't mean anything. I think sometimes titles give people an air of importance that they really don't have. And so with my assistant coaches, it's always been everybody's on the same page. as far as money is concerned. Now, I know that football is way, I mean, you got coordinators, you got bigger staff. But for me, for my full-time assistants, they're all going to make the same amount of money. That's something that for me is important. And I've never changed on that. I try to hire people that, how do I put this? Make my negatives into positives. I'm very familiar with what I'm weak at. And so I want people around me that help turn my weaknesses into strengths. And so that's important to me. I think the other thing is loyalty. We're going to disagree, and we're going to have big arguments in here, but when we walk out the door, I better know that we're all on the same page. And I think that's important. I think in recruiting, you just said it, it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. I can't tell you how many times I've been on staffs where that's my player, that's your player. You get in a staff meeting and one guy's fighting for his guy to get playing time and the other guy's fighting for his guy. It's ridiculous. So we team recruit, but at the end of the day, I'm the best recruiter on the team. And I let my assistant coaches know that. At the end of the day, I'm going to be the one that decides who comes here and who doesn't, because I'm going to be involved. And so I think those few things for me with my staff. I don't hire guys. I want guys that are multi-talented as far as not just a recruiter. They better be able to coach on the floor, because you've seen how I coach. I coach hard, but I let my assistant coaches coach, and I expect them to. And so I want them to be people that are involved in their lives off the court. I want them to be involved in their academics. I mean, I think that's, that's really, really important. I don't have it on me. I have a profile of an assistant coach. I think I wrote down about 6 or 7 things. And a lot of those things are what I just said. But just off the top of my head, I think for me personally, those are things that are important to me.
Yeah, and Steve, those are some really good points. And basketball and football are different in terms of the size of the staff. So it's a little different. I have a little different view, but those are really, really good points. One of the things that I learned early on is I was on a staff in Baltimore when we won the Super Bowl that had Marvin Lewis, who went on to be a head coach, Rex Ryan, who went on to be a head coach, Jack Del Rio, who went on to be a head coach, myself. So there were a lot of A personalities. And one of the things that I learned, and I learned it from Marvin, and Marvin kind of took some of this from Brian Billick, was when you have a staff, you want to have a staff to get together that one is going to be competent in terms of understanding the game and understanding the rules. And then the second one is that they are striving to be head coaches. And I think that's very important. I think that should be everybody's goal. If somebody tells me they don't want to be a head coach, and at some level, it's like, well, that guy's not motivated enough to be a head coach. And the thing that we did as a staff, and I did it with my staff in Atlanta, is we all had equal parts. The coordinator called the game, but we set the week up where every coach had an opportunity to talk to the entire offense or the entire defense, stand up and present the game plan for certain segments of the game. And what I felt that did was it gave those guys an opportunity to be in the role of a coordinator before they got there, or of the role of a head coach before they got there. And it worked great. So we had a guy that was in charge of short yardage. So he'd get up and he'd make his presentation on Thursday that this is how we're going to stop short yardage plays, and this is this is our plan and how we're going to do it. And they got the opportunity to speak in front of the entire team on the defensive and offensive side. And so when we didn't play well if we gave up 3 straight 3rd and 1s, that guy that was in charge of 3rd and 1, he was devastated.
Yeah.
And would come, coach, Smitty, I didn't have our guys right. We didn't have it prepared right. And the other thing that when you have these A-type personalities, you want them to argue or scrimmage. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, Steve, hey, during the staff meeting, that's when we want to work it all out. When we go out on on that practice field, it's all for one and one for all. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be a part of the staff. That's just the way it's going to be. And everybody grows. And I always wanted guys to have an opportunity to speak in front of the entire team so that they could grow as coaches. We even had our assistants to the assistants get up and speak at least once a week. And I think that it gives the young coaches, they get an opportunity to see it, but they actually get to experience it. And so we had guys that were first and second year guys in the NFL that were speaking in front of the whole team. And I think that helped them grow as coaches. And I would try to evaluate it and sit in on the offensive and defensive meetings and give some feedback to the guys. And I think that your assistants are always wanting feedback. I always believe when I was an assistant, coach, what can I do better? Or how can I get this across? So that's kind of how we approached it. Now, we scrimmaged a lot. When I say scrimmaged in those staff meetings, and Steve, you know how those are. Hey, sometimes you're pounding the table. Hey, I think this, but ultimately we're all together. And when we all go out on the team, you got to have those type of guys.
I mean, that leads me to something that you said, that one of the unique opportunities in college basketball is that we do recruit, right? So we're on the road at these events a lot with a lot of coaches. And the thing that always amazes me is how many coaches or younger coaches talk about the people they work with. And it just amazes me that they think that, well, how I would ever hire somebody like that, that would come up to me and talk bad about their situation or what happened in their staff or what happened during recruiting, or I was recruiting this guy, but this guy wanted this guy. The bottom line is when you walk out that door, you're on the same page, and what happens in the locker room, what happens in the office stays in the office. And, one of the reasons why I got the job at A&M, I didn't know Billy Gillespie at all. And I asked him, why did you hire me? He said, because every time I was out on the road, I was watching, you were working. You weren't gossiping. You weren't setting up in the stands talking. You were grinding. You were paying attention to what was going on. And I think there's so much of that going on. And guys are trying to get a job and not doing the job that they have. That's a big problem, I think, in any probably profession, especially in athletics, is you got to do the job. You got to do the one you have, and then you get the next one. And there's so many guys that just, when they get a job, they want the next one right now. And it just doesn't work like that.
No, and you and I are living proof of that, Coach. There's roads and there's curves and there's dead ends that you got to back out of, but you just keep your head down and grind. And I think that's such a good point for young coaches. And it'd be one of my other takeaways from today's talk is, don't be worrying about your next job. Do the job you got now as well as you can do, and try to learn to do it better from the people that are around you.
Or you won't have a job. You're worried about something you don't have, and you won't have the one that you had. And I think that, people hire people that do, people pay attention. They study, they understand who does a good job and who doesn't. And I guess for me, the junior college experience taught me that as well, is because everybody came in to recruit my players. So I had a front porch to everybody's, how they approach recruiting, and what their selling points were. I learned a ton just sitting there listening to other coaches sell their programs to my players, and so there's a lot of ways that you can learn, but, ultimately, you just got to do the job that the one that you have. Probably the proudest thing I ever did was when I went to Northwest Florida. There was an article in Sports, I think Basketball Times a month ago about my experience coming through coaching, and the AD at Northwest Florida is Ramsey Ross, and he said that I was the most low-maintenance coach they've ever had at their school. And the reason why that was is because I just did my job. I didn't worry about the things that I didn't have, okay? I just did my job. It's like East Tennessee State. I didn't worry that we didn't have a charter plane and, we didn't have a huge recruiting budget. I did the job with the things that we had. And, I think, again, so many coaches, especially younger coaches, want more. Sometimes more is less and less is more. They just can't figure that out.
Yes, Steve. And when you start worrying about the things that you don't have, then you're not doing your job. You're not spending time on figuring out how you're gonna win the day. And I used to tell my guys sometimes it's about winning we got to win the day first, before we think about winning games.
Well, and so what you're saying is you're just concentrating on things that affect winning and losing. There's so many things out that I don't even want to know, that doesn't affect winning and losing. That so many people get caught up in, and that's the problem is people get so worried about things that don't affect winning and losing. I concentrate on those things. All that other stuff you can deal with on its own. I don't let that into my thought process. I stay focused on the things that affect winning and losing and things that affect the welfare of my players.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because, particularly when I was at VCU and building the program at VCU, one of the things, coaches would come in and, for me personally, I kind of mentioned this, I didn't have sports supervisors,
Right.
Every coach, I was their sports supervisor. So I dealt with every head coach because I thought they were the most critical people for us to win games, to build our brand, to have success, to go to NCAA championships, to compete on a national level. But the one thing, so when we'd be talking, and they might have something that they said, I need this or I need that. And my question to them was always, well, tell me how that's going to help us win games, tell us how that's going to help our players graduate. If you can tell me those two things, then we'll probably find a way to have the resources to get that done. But that always needed to be, you really had to have a good rationale of how that was going to help you win. It wasn't, well, we need to fly to Timbuktu to play because, for this reason or another. How's that going to help us win games, And
I think effectively that's what Coach and I are saying is that you have to concentrate on that. And it's a great example when you're having a relationship with your administrator, your AD. I think so many coaches fight fights that ain't worth fighting. They worry about the stuff that doesn't matter, like, the color of the garbage cans in the new practice facility or I don't have the right door on my office. I don't care about that crap. I stepped into the Taj Mahal of practice facilities. The guy, Mitch Shaw, he's from Atlanta. He's a 30% owner of the Atlanta Hawks. He runs Noble Investments. He built the facility that I'm sitting in. It's like Christmas Day for me every day. I can't believe the things that we have. But I didn't have that at East Tennessee State. I didn't cry about it. I turned the negatives into positives. Like the Dome, to me, is the best, what did I say it was? The best training facility in the country. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, it's a one-stop shop. You come to the Dome, you can practice, you can lift, you can condition on the turf, and you can go upstairs and do academics. And then we're eating in the locker room. So once you get here to the Dome, it's a one-stop shop. It's the best training facility in the United States. Now everybody else looks at the Dome and goes, oh, my God, that place, it's old, it's a football. No, it's not. It's the best training facility in the country for basketball, right? And that's like here. I don't have to make this place is, but ultimately it's not about buildings. It's about the people in the buildings, and that's what we're really talking about, right? Is getting the right people on the bus, getting the right staff, getting the right players, and then getting everybody moving in the right, in the right direction. And I say that in recruiting all the time because I'm recruiting against high major programs that have the same things we have, like ACC, net television, great education and unbelievable facilities. So what's the difference? Well, the people are the difference. It's the people that can help you turn your dreams into reality. It's the people that understand as a coach, my job is to get you to do the things you really don't want to do every day in order to get the things that you want out of life. That's coaching to me. It's really not about calling plays or X's and O's. Anybody can drop a play. It's getting your players to do things they really don't want to do to get the things that they want.
Well said, Coach. Well said.
Sure is. I know, Steve, you've got a real job, unlike Mike and myself, so you probably need to, get some things done. But really appreciate you taking time out.
Yeah.
And would love to have you back again, sometime.
I really, I appreciate the amount of notice that you gave me. Like, I think it was like 5 minutes or something like that.
Well, I figured you weren't doing much. You got Brooks Savage and BJ Mackey and,
I got great people.
All those guys you took from ETSU.
I took them all. I took them all. Except Jason, and I was glad Jason, it's always great when your assistant coach gets the job, right? I mean, I think it tells a lot about what you were doing and what you built is when, deservedly so, your assistant coach gets the opportunity, to do it because he has, everybody has their hands on the program. It's not just the head coach. Everybody has their role and their fingers on the program. Now we get all the publicity, but we also get the blame too, and so, but I was really proud of that. And I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'll try to work on my golf game. So maybe I can jump in there with you, but I'm not really to that point yet. I have a lot of work to do right across my hallway here in my practice gym.
Well, I got a question for you. So we're going to ask this every time. Who would be your choice for us to get on to our next, future?
Well, I mean, that's pretty easy for me because I think it's pretty well documented that my best friend is Nick Nurse, who, is the head coach of the Toronto Raptors. And, we grew up together, more so after professionally, and not just, just coaching peers, but just really good friends. And I think he's very innovative in his methods. He's done some things in the NBA that a lot of coaches weren't really willing to do, as far as probably, some scheme things. But I think with Nick, like me, I think the reason why he's able to do that is based on his relationships with his players. And I know he had a tremendous relationship with Kawhi Leonard, and that's why he got Kawhi to play the way he played, and they won the world title a year ago. And so I think he'd be great.
Well, sometime I'd love maybe you can help us get him and you.
I figured I was getting probably backed in a corner on that one when I said that.
I think it'd be great to get you and Mike and he on there. I don't need to have any input. You guys are. You got NFL Coach of the Year, College Basketball Coach of the Year, and NBA Coach there. That'd be pretty interesting.
Well, the only difference is Mike's not from Iowa. Him and I Iowa stands for idiots out wandering around. That's kind of what Nick and I have been doing our entire life. He just went a different direction. I went all over the United States, and he went to Europe and then the D League and the G League and all that to get where we kind of have the same story, just at a different path and a different level, and I think he would be somebody that a lot of people would probably want to hear from.
Yeah, that'd be great. So maybe we can work on that. You help us with that?
Yeah. Well, I got to do Top Connect next week. What else? I'm going to you're going to start getting a bill in the mail here pretty soon.
Send me that bill, will you?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll get paid.
Yeah. Better than that.
Well, hey, Steve, I enjoyed it so much. Very, very enlightening for me. And, and it's great to talk. Hey, it's great to talk ball. When I say ball, just, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, it's been enjoyable. And I wish you the best of luck, man. I hope, I hope the first 100 days finishes strong for you. And you get people on the bus. You're the new bus driver,
right?
It's your bus, and you got to get those people talking to one another on that bus.
Well, I appreciate it. And those first 100 days now, there might be a new book coming out called Pandemic, right? I took the first 100 days in a pandemic, which probably is not real brilliant. Okay, a lot of new. Well, there's no manual for that, right? There's just been so much new things every day. It's just really day to day, with that. And so I appreciate it. you know, it's a great place, and they deserve to win, just like ETSU did when I got there. And you know, that's our plan. And you guys need to come on down and see me. I got a membership here at Old Town. You guys can hack around, and I'll sit in here and coach basketball.
That'd be great. You know, every time, Steve, we try to give a couple takeaways that we, either Coach Smith or I, kind of pick up on. And for me, I think the most significant takeaway for me was just what you said kind of toward the end. I mean, you made great comments throughout the whole, you know, through the whole podcast, but I think the one thing is, you know, it's about people. It's not about buildings. It's not about all the accoutrements you have and all that stuff out there. It's about people. It's about getting the right staff. It's getting, you know, the right players. It's getting the right support. It's being out there. So it's all about people. And sometimes people lose track of that. So that's a great takeaway for me. Everybody needs to kind of refocus on that, I think, rather than all the other peripheral stuff. So, Mike, what takeaway did you get from this?
Well, man, I've written down and scratched down a bunch of notes that I'm going to go back and look at. But off the top of my head, I think the biggest takeaway that I have for today's talk is about connecting. And Coach Forbes talked about how he has done it, meeting and talking with your players or someone on your staff every single day means that you are always connected to your team. And I think that's the thing that we all got to remember is that when we're not connected, people don't think positive things. They think negative things when there's no connection. Right. And what you're doing is you're keeping that pipeline of positivity going, Steve. And that to me, that's the biggest takeaway that I have. But there's many others, and I hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again, and we'll keep expanding on this because I admire the success that you've had. I really appreciate, as an ETSU alumni, what you did for the basketball program. We knew when you came, you weren't going to be there forever. And I just wish you the best of luck, and we'll be Wake Forest fans in the Smith family. I can assure you that.
Thank you very much, Mike. That means a lot to me. I remember meeting you right when I got there, and we rode in the car together from the Nice Swanger tournament back to Johnson City, and you gave me a lot of good advice. And, you know, I could honestly, when I'm done, I could see my wife and I moving back to Tri-Cities like you did. You know, we really like it there. And so, again, Doc, appreciate you, and look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, well, we're going to do it. I mean, it's an exciting, you know, thing that, you know, Coach Smith is he's kind of the originator of this. He really wants to help young people, young coaches, young administrators, young executives, whatever. And I think, you know, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. So, Steve, you know, congrats on an incredible run here at ETSU. You know, we talk about culture. You clearly, you know, changed the culture, the support, the identity, you know, the engagement of all the constituencies of ETSU. So, you know, you made a big difference, and you know, in life, when you make a difference in people's lives, you know, I think that's what we're all on the face of the earth for, and you've clearly done it, you know. So, thank you for that. And I know you're busy, so we're going to close this down, and you know, we'll do it again. And you know, like I said, you know, clearly, I'd love to see you and Mike and you know Nick Nurse kind of talk about coaching at the highest level, because you guys.
I'll see what I can do there. I'm pretty sure I got a pipeline to him.
I know you do. Thanks.
All right, guys.
Have a great day, Steve.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
See you.